name, known to my friends and family, was Gessie Borok, but my birth certificate reads Jonah Gershon Borok. I was very seldom called either Jonah or Gershon, but we'll go into that a little bit later on. I was born in Durbanville in 1926, on the 6th of January, to my parents who both came from Lithuania. My father came to South Africa at the age of 17 with nothing. If we used to ask him, "Dad, what did you have when you came to South Africa?" he would say to us, "Never mind 2 farthings, never mind 2 halfpennies, I never even had 2 farthings. But he had a brother in Cape Town, and he found himself a job as a delivery boy for a butcher. Where shall I start? After I did obstetrics, that was 2 years after I qualified, I went to visit the hospital in Cape Town, the Somerset Hospital, and I went to say my farewells to the superintendent of the hospital, and he said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "I'm not doing anything." He said, "Won't you come and take on the job as the anaesthetist, resident anaesthetist?" Because the guy who took the job didn't like it, and he gave it up after a month, or maybe even less. So I said, "Okay, I'll come and I'll do the job." So I became a resident anaesthetist. In that year, Bill and I were already going out with each other, shall we say, dating, and her mother and father and Bill went up to Rhodesia to see Bubbles and Benny. And all of a sudden, around about August that year, I think it was in August that they went, I got a telegram from them, "Please come up to Rhodesia for 2 weeks holiday." So I took 2 weeks off from the job, and I went up to Rhodesia and stayed there for 2 weeks. And I was invited by one of the general practitioners, no names, to join him in practice. And I said, "Okay." We discussed terms and one thing and another. We didn't draw up a contract. I left that to Benny to do it. So then I got a telephone call from Benny at the end of October, saying that a contract has been drawn up, but there's some difficulty with 2 particular points in the contract. Will I please come back to Salisbury? So I went back to Salisbury. I resigned my job, actually, at the hospital, went back to Salisbury, and I think, as Bill mentioned, the one paragraph in the contract was that if we didn't get on, I would be barred for 50 miles from Salisbury. And they also wanted an increase in the payment. And I wasn't prepared for that either. So they said, "Come and see their lawyer." I said, "Okay, I'll come and see your lawyer." So we went and saw their lawyer, and the lawyer started talking about this, that, and the other, and I said to him, "Look, as far as the clause of being barred for 5 years for 50 miles, that doesn't appeal to me. And as far as the additional money is concerned, it doesn't appeal to me either. You discuss the matter with them, and then let me know what you think." To this day, I've never had a reply. Anyway, there I was stuck in Salisbury on my own. I was staying with Bowles and Benny.
So you were stuck in Salisbury?
Yeah, and I was, after that, legal opinion or whatever you want to call it, didn't come to anything. There was another GP who was looking for a partner, and I met him, and we came to an agreement with no written contract or anything, and we went into practice together. He first asked me if I would do a locum for him because he wanted to go on holiday, and the locum I did from the 5th of December until the end of December, when he was back, and on the 1st of January that year, we were officially partners, and we stayed together for 25 years.
And that decision to stay in Salisbury?
This was, I joined Abe Schulman.
Right.
And after a number of years, we were busy, and we were looking for a third partner. And when I was in Cape Town on holiday, I think it was in 1958, I met my Otis through my brother-in-law. And he was looking to go and work somewhere, and I said to him, would you like to come to Rhodesia? And he said yes. When I got back to Salisbury, Schulman went to Cape Town, and I told him to meet my Otis and see what he thought, and he agreed with me that he'd be a good guy. So then there were three of us, and we worked together until 1975, when there were some disagreements, and Abe Schulman resigned, and Meyer and I carried on a 50-50 basis, and then he decided to go to America, and then I was left on my own, and I was very busy, and I took in a guy just to assist me. Then of course the situation in Rhodesia became a bit difficult with terrorist activity and one thing and another, which was getting closer to Salisbury, and I thought to myself that it's time we moved. So we discussed where to go, and as Bill said that I wanted to come to Israel when we first got married, and the final decision was that we would come here. And I made that decision principally because Margaret was already qualified and working. Deborah was at the university and completed her first year. Tanya was doing physiotherapy in Cape Town, and then we had Sarah, who was finishing her first year in school, and I thought that was a convenient time for us to come here, which we did.
Gessie, can you talk a bit about your community work in Salisbury?
My community work in Salisbury, after being there for 9 months, there was an annual general meeting of the congregation, and somebody proposed me for the committee. And one gentleman got up and he said, no, you can't have him, he hasn't been here for a year. So I missed out. The next year I was proposed again, and I was appointed on the committee, and I was on the Schul committee all the years that I lived in Salisbury, without a break. During that period of time, I was also chairman of the Board of Education, and I was on the committee of the Board of Education I suppose 14 or 15 years. At the time when Mr. and Mrs. Harari were the teachers, and I had no problems with them, they were very good. One day, one of my colleagues stopped me and he says, he doesn't know what goes on in Gaida. His son is learning nothing. So what would I do? I was the chairman of the Board of Education at the time. So I decided to go and sit in the class where this kid was being taught. So what happened? First of all, he came late and he had his rugby boots slung over his shoulder. He disrupted the class all the time. He wouldn't sit still. He was up and down all the time. So when I met his father again a few weeks later, I said, you know, I understand your problem, but it's your son's fault that he's not learning anything. He said, okay, well, I'll do something about it. And I think he did. I don't remember. The other activity was, many years ago, they had elections in South Africa and Rhodesia for the various parties in the Zionist organization, and one of the parties was Mizrahi. So they asked me if I would represent Mizrahi on the Central African Zionist organization. I said, okay.
The Board of Deputies or the Zionist organization?
No, this was Central African CASO. So I was on CASO all the years. Whenever there was a meeting, Gessie, there's a meeting this evening, 5:30, 6 o'clock, okay, I'll come. If I couldn't go, I would say I'm not coming. And the Board of Deputies, I was never interested in the Board of Deputies.
In Sharon School?
Not Sharon School either. I wasn't interested. Although it was a good thing that they did start the Sharon School, because it was predominantly Jewish. But today, of course, it's different. Out of a school with 160 children, I think there are just 2 Jewish children. Obviously, because there are very few Jewish families left in Salisbury. We decided to come to Israel, and we left Rhodesia at the end of 1978. We went down to Muizenberg because the house that we lived in was still belonging to us. And we spent 6 weeks there and came to Israel and landed here on the 15th of February 1979. There were another 3 that Tanya phoned the day before yesterday. When did she phone? Sunday.
Yeah.
To say there were 3 more. So I said, well, send it to me. Anyway, she sent it to me. It's all on the computer. I'm going to print it out one of these days.
So when you see all these people reaching out to greet you and wish you for your 90th, you've touched a lot of people, obviously, over the years.
Yeah, a lot of them were my patients.
So how does that feel for you?
It gives me a feeling of satisfaction that these people still remember me after all these years. There was somebody, a couple in Australia, there was a couple in America, and they were all over the show. They just wished me happy birthday. And
You remember we were out once and we met a family.
What's that?
We met a family that you recognized. I didn't know who they were. They came up to him, such excitement, and they were patients from long ago. You remember?
So you've had a lot of people reach out around the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you feel good. So all that leading up and anxiety.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we sat here. Tanya sat here with her iPad.
Yeah.
And she could see on her iPad who was sending these messages, and it was quite satisfying to know that so many people still remembered me. some of the names I couldn't even remember. And some of them sent some warm greetings. I can't remember who they are. But what can I do? There's nothing I can do about it.
So Gessie, I asked Belle the same question I'm going to ask you. If someone was to sit and watch this down the road, a grandchild, and what kind of message would you like to express to them? How would you summarize your 90 years and what you've experienced in your life? And what sort of message would you like to pass on?
Next to my bed, there's that letter that Sarah wrote.
I'm going to hold it.
This is my youngest daughter.
So this is just explain the background.
What's that?
Just explain the background. Who wrote this?
This is a letter addressed to me by my youngest daughter. I won't read the whole letter, I'll read just a section of the letter. Over the years you've told many stories about your training and practice. I've heard many times, listen to the patient. I take this advice as a gift you have given me, and I implement it as much as I can. I see how well this serves me in my everyday and feel your presence and influence in developing a humane approach to my medical practice. I've also always appreciated your common sense attitude to medical practice and hope to continue to adopt this as well.
Just try and put it down a bit.
Dear, this is the beginning of the letter. Dear Dad, celebrating your 90th birthday, I can hardly believe it. I was always given the feeling, being the very youngest, that old age was not something to be taken for granted. I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate the home we have been given to be together. You have seen me grow up, go to the army, travel overseas, graduate from medical school, marry and become a mother of 3. Each of these was a junction I was never sure I was to be lucky enough to have you. And Mom, of course, with me. There are many things I could say on this special occasion, but some are more remarkable about the home and her upbringing.
And how does that make you feel?
Makes me feel very good. Makes me feel that we've done the right thing. And I think that all the girls, in spite of the fact that 2 of them are in their 60s and one is nearly there, I think they all appreciate the manner in which we brought them up and the manner in which we behaved. And I think they have done the same in their lives, although unfortunately the 3rd daughter lost her husband because he walked out on her for whatever reason. But she's very good and appreciates the way she was brought up. It's setting an example both in the home and outside, so they can learn how to behave and how to conduct their lives as well. I was just thinking, I thought of something else earlier. We actually had a strict upbringing as children, and we learned this from our parents.
You did.
If we wanted to go somewhere in the village, we had to ask, can we go? And if there was no, it was no. You could keep asking, but no is no. And that's how we learned that, how we grew up. But we had a happy home. My father was very young when he passed on. My father hadn't yet reached 50. I was going to say that Bill and I have never ever had a serious argument between us. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
We've overlooked certain things. There's no point in arguing about certain things because you're not going to change it. And we've, thank God, been married for 64 years.
64 years. Yeah.
We married in 1952, February 1952. February this year will be 64 years. And we've been happily married.
So the answer is not to argue. Move on.
The answer is not to argue. The answer is to respect each other. The answer is to show respect for each other and love for each other, and that is the kind of life that one should lead. It gives you great satisfaction that there hasn't been any arguments and that life carries on without having to argue about anything. And there's no point in arguing about minor stuff. It's a waste of time. And that's my story. I was asked in the shul that I go to, one of the members who happened to be a patient of mine knew that I had stopped working. And he came up to me one Friday evening after the service and he said, now that you've retired, wouldn't you like to come to the shul committee? I said, no, thank you very much. I've had 25 years of it before I came and that's enough. I don't want to go onto the shul committee. That's it. Life in Durbanville was a quiet life, and because of the influence of the minister that we had, the majority of the families led a religious life. There was a minyan every Friday night, every Saturday morning, every Saturday afternoon, and as kids we used to run outside and look for the 3 stars. And when we saw the 3 stars, there were the 3 of us, we always used to look skyward, and when we saw 3 stars, we'd run back into the shul and say, right, there are 3 stars, the Shabbos is out, and that's how we lived. We lived a religious life. And we carried it on into adulthood. I still observe certain things. I don't write on Shabbat. I don't drive my car anymore on Shabbat. I used to drive in Rhodesia on Shabbat because of work. But here in Rehovot, we met a couple who were very religious. They were teachers. And they had just come back from overseas. I don't know where they were, but they became patients of mine. And we got to know each other quite well. And they used to invite us to come to their home for Friday evening meals. One Saturday morning, at the beginning I was still driving here when I bought the car. And on a Saturday it was very difficult to have a park in the yard. The car was standing across the street, and we were invited somewhere for lunch or something. I don't remember where we were going, but I walked across the street, and this couple walked down the pavement. And I felt so embarrassed that I said to Bill, no more driving on Shabbat. And that was in the first year that we were, no, not the first year.
The first year.
It was when we moved here, after we moved here. When we lived in Aharoni, I was still driving on Shabbat. But here this couple walked past and I felt extremely embarrassed, and I said to Bill, we're not going anywhere. So now, since then I haven't driven on Shabbat. And now I can't drive on Shabbat because I haven't got a motor car anyway. That's the story.
That's true.
It's and it doesn't bother me that I don't have the car anymore. It's I gave it to one of my daughters, and there we are. As I say, the religious upbringing has stuck with me all the years. And in Salisbury, as I mentioned before, I served on the shul committee. All the years I lived there, I was on the Central African Zionist Organization for almost all the years. That's my story. And I was busy. And I always found time, even though I was busy in practice in Salisbury, I always found time to do other things, such as when there was an Israel United appeal, I would always take the names of the doctors and I would find time to go and
Yeah, to get it.
collect money.
Yeah.
It used to give me pleasure when I used to go and visit Dr. Lawson in Ireland. And I would go in the evening after work, take a drive out there, and when I walked in he knew what I was coming for, and he says, "Come on, let's have a whiskey before." We sat down, and I obviously I'm not a whiskey drinker, but I had a little whiskey so I could get some more money out of it, which I did. And I found time to do whatever was necessary. To go to a meeting, I'd always find time to go to a meeting, whatever it was. But that's it. That's the story.